Welcome to Unsolved Canadian Mysteries. We have a special episode today. It is a Patreon from last year, The Many Deaths of Tom Thomson. But feel free to subscribe to our Patreon to get the newest episode that we just put out on there of the curious case of Tootsie LaFleur. What was it?
The Flesh. Hello, everybody. My name is Kenton DeYoung, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Dylan Fairman.
Yeah.
And this is Unsolved Canadian Mysteries. So, Dylan, how have you been?
I'm a bit better. No, I'm good. Good, Kenton. I'm wearing the same clothes as the last episode of the free podcast.
I am too, yes.
Wow, what are the odds? Could it be we just recorded it, like, literally after?
Maybe. You never know.
The big thing, though, Kenton, is, are you doing good?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really good.
And the bigger thing is, people actually have supported us and are now watching us right now, or listening.
Yes. Thank you for supporting our podcast.
Yeah, super thank you. This is cool.
It's been a blast, all the support we've got over the last 2 years since we started in 21.
Yeah, it's weird.
So it's great. Thank you so much for everything you guys have supported us and for subscribing to the Patreon and everything like that.
Yep.
It means a lot.
And if there's no one there, well, this isn't going good. But thank you nonetheless.
I want to make a reference like if there's a tree in the forest and it falls and no one's there to hear it, but I can't think of how.
If
Same idea.
If there's a podcast on Patreon, but there's no one to pay for it, is it really a podcast?
Yeah, cool, something like that.
Something like that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's close.
Yeah. Okay. Tonight's mystery is the murder of Tom Thomson. Some people even call it the many deaths of Tom Thomson.
The many deaths?
He dies once, but there's different ways of how he might have died.
Oh, so he's like a theoretical cat with 9 lives?
Kind of. So, do you know anything about Tom Thomson?
No, Kenton. I just laughed at his name, so I'm pretty sure I don't.
So, he is a famous Canadian painter.
I didn't hear him before. What did he paint?
Pictures of Algonquin Provincial Park.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at a couple of them right now. They're pretty good, actually. I like them.
I didn't like any of them.
Really?
No.
Well, I guess I'm a little more artsy.
You're a little more cultured than me.
Yeah.
His works of painting inspired the Group of Seven, which is a famous Canadian troupe of painters.
Oh.
And they, because of what happened in this story, they chose to no longer paint Algonquin Provincial Park so that it could be in his memory.
Oh.
So he is kind of like the guy who started the Group of Seven, for people who know what the Group of Seven is. There's a local connection with them in Regina, but I don't know what it is. I think they painted here, had a studio here or something like that.
Do you know any of the other people in the Group of Seven?
No.
Cool.
This story takes place in 1917.
Yeah.
It's a Group of Seven, like 100 and some years ago.
I see.
But I think they continued into the 40s and 50s and 60s, but I think that's after that they kind of all died off. So Tom Thomson was taken out of school at an early age, possibly due to a lung condition. This afforded him time to explore wooded areas and develop a deep appreciation for nature. There's some stories that he was an expert canoeist, having often canoed in the middle of the lake to spend the night so he could get away from insects. If you've ever been out up north, you have, I think. We've talked about this. The insects are atrocious.
Gross.
I was up near Cretan and Flin Flon a couple years ago in the summer, and I actually ran out of the forest crying. The swarm of insects I encountered. It was awful.
Yeah, I heard Alaska's bad.
Yeah, I'd rather go in Alaska in the winter when they're all dead. I don't want to go up there in the summer. I'd rather go up there in the dark and the cold than go up there and deal with all those bugs.
Right. Agreed.
Agreed. So Tom Thomson was supposedly a very good canoeist, but in 1912, he did once capsize his canoe and lost all of his belongings. Some accounts he capsized his canoe more than once. So this does come up in the story. So the morning of July the 8th, 1917, Thomson was seen walking with Shannon Fraser, his friend, and the owner of the Mowat Lodge. The Mowat Lodge is on Canoe Lake, and he was the owner of the lodge. Now, we'll mention Shannon Fraser quite a few times, but to clarify, Shannon Fraser is a male with a name like Shannon.
Oh.
Just wanted to verify.
Well, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. So they were seen, Thomson and Fraser were seen walking, and later that day, around 12 o'clock, Thomson got on the river, canoed, and started on his journey. I think what he was doing was he was going to go somewhere and go painting. That was kind of his goal. Later that day, Martin Bletcher and his sister found Tom's canoe capsized in the water. But they didn't think it was his canoe, and they just thought maybe it was just some other canoe. Wasn't a big deal. And the Bletchers, they know Thomson and Fraser. And they carried on. And when they were coming back, they saw the canoe again and realized, oh no, that is Tom's canoe. So they flipped it over and hauled it to shore, but Tom was not in the canoe. He was nowhere to be seen.
Well, that's good, because if they found him in the canoe, that means he's just dead.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah.
that's good news, kind of.
So 8 days pass, entire week. And then eventually Dr. Goldwyn Howland finds his body in the water. Tom has a 4-inch bruise above his right temple. He has dry blood in his ear and a fishing line wrapped around one of his legs.
Okay.
And now, like, they didn't have the fishing line that we have now, which is like a nylon, right? I read an article. It was a big thing about the types of fishing line it could have been. And I just think it was like horsehair. I don't know exactly what it was. It was like, I don't really care about the type of fishing line around his leg. But it wasn't nylon. So just, yeah. So it was a long article about type of fishing line. I skimmed over it. I did not care. It wasn't nylon. That's all it was. I think it was horsehair or something like that. So the inquest into the body happened at Martin Bletcher's cottage, where it should have happened at the lodge that Fraser had, because that was kind of the hub, not just this guy's cottage. Now, as they're looking at the body, the doctor and the Bletchers, and I think Fraser was there too, the Bletchers served up beer and cigars, which is not something you do when your friend is dead on the table, right? Well, maybe if you're really like upset, you'll crack open a beer and smoke a cigar, maybe make things a little bit easier.
Maybe that's how he wanted it.
Okay, maybe that's how he wanted it. So Dr. Howland had concluded that the cause of death was drowning. The coroner wasn't able to get up to the lake in time for the next couple of days, but he read the medical report the doctor wrote up and listened to the 6 witnesses that were there that day, and he agreed when he did get there that Tom had died from drowning, and the bruise on his head was from him hitting a rock or hitting the boat on his way down.
After drowning.
Yeah. He fell, his head drowned.
Right.
But the coroner never saw the body. By the time the coroner got there, they already buried the body. Because again, it had been 8 days, and the body was already decomposing quite a bit. So they thought, okay, we'll just bury it now. So he'd be buried 1 day after he was found, and then 2 days later, he was dug up again, put in a casket, and sent to Owen Sound, where he would then sent and be buried in his hometown.
Wait, why would they bury him?
I think they were going to leave him there, but then his family wanted him back home.
Oh, such a hassle.
Now, his casket, when it arrived in Owen Sound, was never opened. One of the reasons why is because of the smell coming out of it.
Ew.
It was so gross, they decided to leave it closed. So that was in 1917. In 1956, the story's been around for a while, a body was exhumed at Canoe Lake, and they thought it was the body of Tom Thomson. The thing is, the skull they found, in the same area that he was supposed to be buried in, had a hole in it. Not just a bruise, it was a hole. And the theory began that Tom Thomson was still buried at Canoe Lake, and the casket they sent to Owen Sound was filled with rocks, and they didn't want anyone opening the casket to see what really happened to Tom Thomson. But further investigation into the skull determined they think it was an indigenous person's skull who happened to be killed and is buried in the similar area.
Wow.
Which is a bit of a, like, it could happen, but I mean, to have 2 people killed under mysterious circumstances, undocumented, in the same area of the same lake, in the same area of time, it's kind of a bit of a stretch.
Yep.
So that kind of begins the many deaths of Tom Thomson. What exactly happened to him?
All right, let's get strapped in here. Lay it on me, Kenton. People call you Kenton?
Some people call me Canton. Some people call me Cantoon.
Wow.
Yeah. Do they call you anything else besides Dylan?
Yeah, Dylon.
Dylon. All right.
Dickhead.
No. All right. So back to the story. Dylon. The first theory of what happened to Tom Thomson is that he died by accident. Okay, pretty simple one.
Yep.
He had already tipped the canoe once, probably a couple times. The idea here is that the fishing line wrapped around his leg, that was an old-fashioned way of treating a sprained ankle or arthritis. I don't know about that, but I'm guessing it was a lot of fishing line.
But wasn't he quite the canoeist?
He was, so they say, yeah. But he did, fall into the water a couple times. But I guess it happens. Everyone falls into the water when they're canoeing.
Sussy.
So the idea here is that he had his leg wrapped around deliberately with fishing line. He stood up in the canoe to go pee or whatever. The canoe tipped. He fell and banged his head and died in the water. That is kind of the main theory, is that that's what happened to him. It's just an accident.
Wait, if you're in a canoe and you have to poop, do you poop while the canoe's moving?
Well, you're supposed to go to shore and do your business on land.
Oh, you're not supposed to just poop in the moving water?
Well, I'm sure it would be fine, but you would probably fall into the water. Okay. Second theory.
Have you ever tried to swim away from a poop?
No, I have not.
All right.
Okay. Second theory. So at the time, Tom Thomson's painting career was taking off. He had made some great works. He was in some art galleries. The man was 36 years old. He was finally kind of grasping his way through life, right?
Cool.
But the theory is that he committed suicide. Why would he do such a thing? He was under a lot of pressure to marry a woman named Winnie Traynor. Really didn't want to get married or marry her. After Tom's death, Winnie and her mother took a 9-month trip to Philadelphia. The idea here is that Winnie was pregnant and wanted to marry Tom so the child would be born legitimately, right? And because Tom died, they went to Philadelphia to give birth to the child and put up for adoption out there to come back to Canada and live their life, right?
I see.
That's the idea.
Wow.
That Tom didn't want to get married. He said, I'm at a point in my career now that if I go, people will be proud of who I am. They won't know about this child. And he just took himself out. Again, I don't really know how he could do it. Sure, you can fall into the water like he's done before, but it doesn't kill you, right? And it's hard to hit yourself hard enough to kill yourself with a bat or a rod or something. I'm sure you could, but I mean, there's easier ways to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's like, you watch like movies like Saw, like people can't even do crazy stuff like that to save their lives, let alone to end it.
And it's not really a reason to kill yourself is because you don't want to get married. You know?
Well, maybe
you could just keep putting it off, you know? They also say, because the whole theory of Winnie being pregnant was never confirmed, like, for sure, right? There was a lot of talk the two of them had, like, a romance going on. And Winnie was one of the people who came to the cabin to try and see his body, right, after he had died. And they wouldn't let her in. Because of the state of the body. So I think people knew they had a relationship and they didn't want her to see the body in that state. So there was definitely something there between the two of them, but what it was, we don't know for sure. So the next theory is that he was murdered. Kind of all the next ones are that he was murdered. Who murdered? And that's
They're just various murders.
Yeah, various people who might have killed him. Yeah, exactly. So the next theory is that he was murdered by his friend Shannon Fraser. So the night before his disappearance, Tom, Shannon, and several others were heavily drinking. Tom had lent Shannon some money and asked Shannon when he could repay him. The theory here, anyway, that Shannon's wife would later say, because she was snooping through Tom's stuff, is that Tom needed the money for the wedding. And he didn't want to say that to Shannon, but he's like, hey, can you give me the money you owe me because I have some expenses coming up, okay? Shannon had a short temper and was drunk, and instead of saying, Tom, I'll pay back whenever, he punched Tom.
Nice.
Tom then fell on a fence and collapsed. Shannon was concerned he might have killed Tom or something, so he dragged Tom to the canoe, put him in the canoe, and then Annie and him took the canoe out, towed it out to the water, and let it go so that Tom might, just fall into the water.
Interesting. But how does that work with the fishing line, I wonder? Or is that just a coincidence?
Well,
in that scenario,
I still think it might have been an arthritic thing, but Annie said that they tied a weight to his ankle.
Oh.
So that he would sink into the water.
So Annie's saying this is what happened.
Annie was involved this night with
disposing.
Yes.
Wow.
But and that's pretty incriminating, right?
That's bad right there.
She only told this story after Shannon died, so years later.
I see.
But the problem with this story is that they had a witness the next morning. Shannon and Tom were walking together before Tom went on the water. They saw them that morning. So Annie's story doesn't add up to other witnesses.
So she's trying to just maybe, I don't know. Anyway.
It's a weird thing. Why would you say you've committed this crime and you say all these things we did to cover up the crime when you have witnesses that say, well, I saw him alive after that. And there was other people that night at the party. So, things it doesn't quite add up.
Although witness testimonies are kind of garbage sometimes.
That is true.
Could have just been Shannon with somebody else.
Yeah. Or the person who saw them could have been off by a day.
True. Because this is how long after that she's saying it.
She's saying this years later.
Right.
And, you say to someone like, hey, when did you last see Tom? He's like, oh, I saw him this morning. Last see him. I guess actually he disappeared for 8 days and then they found the body.
Right.
So to say, oh, did I see Tom on Tuesday or Wednesday?
Right.
I don't know. So that could have been it. The witness saw them on the wrong day. And then Annie and Shannon took him out. That's one of the stories, one of the theories. Okay. Which is pretty plausible.
Yep.
A lot of people go with that theory, that it was Shannon, and Shannon killed him, and then Annie kind of helped. Another theory is that it was Martin Bletcher. Now, Martin Bletcher was the guy who saw the canoe that day. capsized. Him and his wife Bessie or something like that. They saw the canoe capsize. They went past it on the way back. They saw it again and realized whose canoe it was. Bletcher had German heritage. He did not want to go fight in the war because, he'd be fighting against his own people, right? So he was a draft dodger. Tom was older, so he didn't get enlisted into the war. He tried to join, but he couldn't due to some kind of medical condition. But the two of them were very different on their opinions on the war. And Bletcher had a bit of an attitude, a bit of an anger problem, and they got into quite a few quarrels that summer, the two of them. Even the night before the disappearance, Bletcher and Tom got an argument. So there's two people that Tom fought with that night. One was Bletcher and one was Shannon, right? Martin Bletcher and Shannon Fraser. The theory is the next morning. So after Tom and Shannon go for their walk, and Tom gets on the water, he's going down the river, whatever, and he passes by Bletcher. And Bletcher had it out for Tom already because the night before and all the events coming up to it. And it says there's been accounts of Bletcher swinging his paddle at other people on the water. And the idea here is that he swung it at Tom and hit Tom across the head with the paddle, knocked him out of the canoe. Canoe flipped and he kept going. Then later he went back with his wife. They saw the canoe. He didn't tell anyone who he was because I did that, right? Kind of thing. And then on the way back, he kind of came to the realization, well, someone else is going to see his canoe. We might as well be the heroes who find Tom's canoe, right? That's kind of the idea. Then later, when they found the body, they didn't take it to Fraser's lodge. They took it to Bletcher's cabin to do the inquiry. So now Bletcher is the guy who found the canoe. He's the guy who offered up the place for the inquiry. He gave them beer. He gave them cigars. He is the good guy in the story, not the guy who probably killed him. So he was just a little too helpful for someone who fought with him all throughout the summer.
Right.
Okay.
You think if you had that kind of relationship with that kind of person, rather than go out of your way to help considerably, you would just be like, wow, that sucks, and just move on.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Right.
Now, the fifth theory is one I've seen in previews for articles about the story or talking about it, but I've never actually seen any direct story to it. So the idea here is that there was a lot of German people who were dodging the draft during the war, like Bletcher. And a lot of them went into remote locations in Canada to hide.
Right.
And the idea here is that Tom stumbled upon somebody, a German draft dodger, something of that sort, a German spy, that kind of thing. That's one of the ideas. And they killed him. Now, this seems kind of strange, but one of the weird things about his condition when they got him out of the water is, one, he had dry blood in his ear. And if you're in the water for 8 days, there's no dry blood in your ear, right? Unless you're floating with your ear up for 8 days.
Right.
Next, they never mentioned his lungs being filled with water. If he had drowned, they should be filled with water. Or if he's in the water for 8 days, there should still be water in his lungs. The only option otherwise is that he had his neck bent or his esophagus collapsed or something when he couldn't bring in the water. But then he wouldn't have drowned, right? So the idea is that there was another party involved who maybe killed him on shore and then took the body a week later and dumped it somewhere, and then he was found. But I've had a lot of trouble finding any kind of collaborative evidence to back up this, or any really good stories to back it up, other than a lot of claims that say it was a German spy, it was a German draft dodger, something like that. And I'm sure the stories out there explains it more in detail, but I just haven't been able to find it. And I read so many articles trying to find that. That's why I was late tonight. I was trying to find something to verify the German draft dodger spy story, and I couldn't find anything other than those little bits I shared.
Wow.
So we got accident, suicide because he didn't want to get married, killed by his friend Shannon over money, killed by his non-friend Bletcher, or a German sympathizer, draft dodger, spy somewhere in the woods.
Right.
So who do you think, and what do you think of the story?
Well, story's great, Kenton.
Well, thank you.
It's great, Kenton.
Thank you.
You're missing a huge factor here.
Okay, sure. All right.
Huge factor.
Okay.
He's a great canoeist. We know this.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Okay.
All right.
We know this. It's a fact. Now, where do you canoe, Kenton? What do you canoe on?
I canoed on Kingsmere Lake.
Okay, so lakes.
Yep.
Bodies of water.
Yep.
Rivers.
Yep.
Where are bodies of water, rivers, lakes found, Kenton?
In forests.
In forests. And what do forests usually contain, Kenton?
Yeah, okay. Bears?
Bears.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kenton.
Yeah, all right.
Like you already know what I'm going to say. My theory is the superior canoe ship of this man would only have been broken by one thing, and that is a charging bear.
Yeah.
He was canoeing in shallow waters when a bear charged through the shallow waters towards him and he raised his oar to defend himself, but the bear smacked the oar, which then the oar smacked him in the head and knocked him off the boat. How does the dried up blood make sense then? Well, he was in the boat, floating along, until eventually got toppled over and he ended up in the water. Case closed. It was a bear.
You actually made a very interesting point with that theory.
Thank you.
They said when they recovered the boat, it was missing its oar, and they don't know what happened to it. One theory is that whoever killed them used the oar and then burned the oar. But if a bear had done it and smacked him and the oar would have gone flying.
Right.
And yeah, they wouldn't have found it because they would have been looking in the wrong place for the oar. So, yeah, okay. And you know what? There are probably bears in that area.
Oh, guaranteed.
Certainly, yeah.
It's little known fact. If you see a tree, there's a bear within 20 meters of you.
Wow. It's not a very big distance.
It's a proven statistic.
Okay.
Canadian statistic.
All right. Okay. Well, I think it was Bletcher.
Okay. Interesting theory, I guess.
Just because of how goody two shoes he kind of acted after the fact, helping out, everything like that. I can see it being Fraser, even though Annie had that story that they killed him the night before. He could just say, well, I was with him. He could have elaborated with the other story. That's like, oh, I was with him that morning, right?
Right.
No, we didn't kill him. My wife's just crazy, obviously, right? I don't know. I would say Bletcher. I could see Bletcher. He's been known to swing his paddle at people. I could see him taking him out on the water.
Yeah. It's just so in my mind, the second one makes the most sense if you figure out the reasoning behind why she would want to tell.
It's true.
If you figure that out, you figure out the story.
It's true.
Why does she want to share that information? Why did she wait till after he died? I didn't want to sully his name. I didn't want him to go to jail. Well, then why would you say it after? Why not just not say it at all? You've gotten away with it for this long. So it's just...
That's true.
You need to know the reasoning behind that. But yeah, yours, that third one, I think you just like to go for the underdog ones. You know what I mean? This guy, he's a little too nice.
He's being too helpful. He's obviously the killer.
You've seen a lot of movies, Captain.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. So, that's the theories. And I guess we have our two different solutions. We have the Bletcher one, and we have your...
Bears.
Bears, yeah. Okay.
Bear, most likely.
Okay.
Just bear.
Singular.
Could have been bears.
Yeah.
We just don't know. It wasn't documented.
The many bears of Tom Thomson's murder.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the end of it. I think we've solved it.
And I think we just did our very first Patreon episode, Kenton.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for subscribing. You'll see more inside images, videos, podcasts, research, stuff like that on the Patreon about what we do behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We don't know what everything we're going to do yet. We talked about t-shirts. A couple episodes ago, we might do t-shirts, but we'll see what happens.
For sure, you'll get an extra episode.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
For sure. Like this one. You'll get this one.
Yeah. And then no other ones. No, you'll get more.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on today, Dylan.
Thank you for having me here in my house.
As always, my name is Kenton DeYoung, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Dylan Fairman. And this has been Unsolved Canadian Mysteries.